when I think about what we learn at school and learn as young people, I don't want to say a lot of it's not relevant, but I think it comes back to the saying around like the only things that are sure in life are death and taxes. And for me, when it comes to education, is the assurance that regardless of what path you go down in life, you're going to have to interact with money in one shape or form. But yet, as an education system, we leave that to chance so much. So really looking to fill that gap and I guess have an impact so that kids are prepared for the financial future after they leave school.
Welcome everybody to It's Never About Money. For those of you that are new to the podcast, this is not your typical financial planning podcast, although I am a financial planner. This is a podcast that attempts to explore the interaction of money and meaning in our lives, and not just talking about financial planning strategies. So being financially literate, in our view, provides an awareness of the way in which we make decisions about money, ultimately affecting many aspects of our lives. And to this end, I'm really thrilled to have Simon Brown, the visionary co-CEO of Banqer, which is a platform transforming financial education for the young minds of today. Today, we will explore and understand that money is more than just numbers. It's about shaping a life of meaning and fulfillment, and that this level of financial awareness is really, really important to start early as the adults of tomorrow enter an increasingly complex world. So welcome, Simon. How are you?
Great, thanks, Joe. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's great. I was just thinking before we were starting that thinking about my earliest memories when it comes to money. There are a couple of things, you think about, when you're a kid, going to church and dad giving you a few coins, silver coins to put in the donation area. But I also remember the brown paper bags at school where you'd put some coins in there and take it over to the canteen to get whatever it is that you liked. So usually for me it was a meat pie. And I was thinking, Simon, that these early memories were really tangible as a kid. Like you're actually letting go of money and you're kind of thinking about the coins and the dollars and so on. I was thinking about in today's digital world that. Do we lose a little bit of that? Is that stuff still happening or not? And so we'll start with that and just ask you, what are your earliest memories of money? Yeah, absolutely.
Your recollection of learning about money at school is one that I hear from a lot of adults. The old saving schemes that were delivered by our schools were definitely a thing of the past now. And I think I was of a generation that sort of missed the end of that. So for me, most of my early conversations and interactions with money were with my family. They're probably the two main ones I remember is being paid pocket money for cleaning my room when I was really young. And then as I got a bit older and the sort of financial concepts that I discussed with my parents got a little bit complex. I'm off a farm originally. So my dad would take great delight driving around the farm, trying to explain foreign exchange to me and why the currency being up or down was a good or bad thing as a farmer. So those are sort of my early financial memories. But I definitely take your point. Times have definitely changed in terms of the tangible physical nature of money and the relationship that young people have with it.
Well, I think that's where you guys come in, right? So you're this, the co-CEO of Banqer, an amazing platform to really give some, I suppose, tangibility or connection with money back to kids, really allowing them to understand the decisions that they could make financially. And I would love you to just sort of give us a bit of a short introduction to yourself and what inspired you to get involved with Banqer.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you've touched on, we at Banqer sort of provide financial education platforms for schools. That's anything from primary school through to senior secondary. The way we came about was sort of by chance, to be honest. It was based on a conversation that my co-founder was having with her younger brother, quite younger at that stage. She was sort of in her mid-20s and he was sort of around 12 or so. Normally conversations at that stage of their life were around sport. He's a big fan of football and cricket, and also a wrestler called John Senior. Some people may be familiar with him. But this particular weekend, he was asking questions about tax and retirement and paying people. And she thought this is very cool, but it's also a little bit strange for this 12-year-old boy who I thought I knew to be asking these questions. She pressed a bit further to understand what was going on, and it turned out that his teacher was running a classroom economy, which she thought was pretty cool. Some really relevant life skills that, as an older sister who was also trained as an accountant, had never thought to talk to her brother about. But it also dawned on her that the manual way they were doing it wasn't particularly relevant in this day and age, and it could also be a lot more efficient for the teacher. So what sort of started as a bit of a weekend project to support her younger brother's class and the teacher has sort of grown from that to be a financial education offering that's used throughout Australasia.
Yeah, and what inspired you though? Like, what motivated you to get involved? Like, why do you care so much about it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I think about what we learn at school and learn as young people, I don't want to say a lot of it's not relevant, but I think it comes back to the saying around like the only things that are sure in life are life, death, and taxes. And for me, when it comes to education, is the assurance that regardless of what path you go down in life, you're going to have to interact with money in one shape or form. But yet, as an education system, we leave that to chance so much. So really looking to fill that gap and I guess have an impact so that kids are prepared for the financial future after they leave school.
That makes a lot of sense. So, could you give us and maybe distill a little bit more tangibly what Banqer, the program, actually does? Like, what programs are being rolled out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've sort of got three versions of our Banqer platforms: a primary school version, junior secondary, and senior secondary, and they're all based around a simulation. So essentially, we transform the classroom into an economy. Students have their own mock online bank accounts. They earn a fictitious wage. They pay expenses, and then they engage in a variety of different financial concepts, just like you and I do in the real world. So that can be, as I've touched on, getting a job and preparing a CV. They pay expenses. That could be renting their desk in primary school, or in our senior school platform, they go renting and they consider how they are going to furnish their flat. They consider retirement savings, so superannuation. They take out insurance. They start investing. So all the sorts of things that you and I are doing in the real world, but in the classroom.
Do you feel that they actually engage with that? Do you feel like they actually understand the implications of what they're doing? How do you kind of get them? Like, they're not at the stage of worrying about their children because they're children. So, insurances and so on, as an example, you've got to think of yourself as an adult and then having kids to have the dependents to worry about life insurance and things of that nature. So how do you get them to kind of like engage with the adult concepts as a child?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because you talk about financial education and teaching kids about money, and it sounds boring. Like, really, it sounds boring the way we traditionally and the way we often approach it.
Yes.
But I think the simulative approach for us is sort of the secret sauce, I guess. Like, for those primary school students, I think they get a real kick out of being treated like adults. Like, they've got their own bank account. They're paying their expenses. They're paying tax. Like, they get a real kick out of being treated like adults and learning skills that they see as relevant to themselves and their lives. And I think that only compounds as those students get older, particularly those senior school students that are learning a variety of different things in school, some of which they may not see as relevant. And so when they get the opportunity to learn about money that they know is going to be relevant to them in their lives, I think that sort of intrinsically drives engagement and excitement around it.
That makes sense. It's interesting. Like, I can't see it now because I'm now in my 40s, but when I was younger, I was always wanting to be older. So you're kind of using that sort of, that motivation to feel like you're more responsible, you're more of an adult, you're thinking about adult things. When you tell a toddler they're a toddler, they'll tell you quickly, no, I'm a child. Or when you tell, so it's sort of that sort of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was in a class a couple of weeks back, actually, in Melbourne, and I think they were year 5 students, and they were just enamored with the humble term deposit. Like, these students were just getting massive kicks out of term deposits and how much interest they were earning and when their money was maturing. And that sounds counterintuitive, that sort of level of engagement, but they love it. They love, as you say, acting and being treated like adults.
That's great. You're clearly using fictitious interest rates because interest rates haven't been great around term deposits for a little while.
we don't tell them that about until a bit later.
Yeah, right. So, what are some of the challenges that you've faced in implementing Banqer in schools, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, the biggest one is schools are a really busy place. Teachers have a lot on their plate. There's a lot asked of them. So to make time for something else is another challenge, particularly when a lot of their workload and their focus is driven by curriculum, and financial education sure shows up in different parts of the curriculum, but maybe not as strongly as it could be. So for us, overcoming that challenge has really been about making it as easy for teachers to deliver as possible, and also dovetailing into different parts of the curriculum. So making it relevant for maths or for humanities, and also then driving that student engagement. So they use a platform that's easy, delivers relevant skills that relate to other parts of the curriculum, and then the students love it.
Yeah, interesting. And I wonder, you might not have a moment, but, is there a moment or a rationale where you've kind of gone, oh, I understand now why it's not just numbers on a screen, but it actually, this is a tool for shaping someone's life, and the decisions that they make in the future. Were there any moments in your journey that kind of really connected with that idea that it's not just financial strategies, but it's what those strategies and the ability to make good decisions can do for one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every time I get into a classroom and see the way that students are interacting with the platform and interacting with money and money concepts, that sort of reinforced to me about the potential that this has to make a difference in their lives. I think one story probably comes to mind. At one stage, I was talking to a teacher again. I think the students were probably around year 5 or 6, and she'd had a student come up to her and said, I think when I go home, I'm going to make mum a cup of tea. And the teacher said, why is that? And this young girl responded, because I now understand how hard this is for her and how much time and effort she puts into running our household, into running the budget, into bringing money in for us. And for me, that, I guess, is representative of what it's all about. It's giving our students that appreciation of the financial world and what it's all about, and how it intertwines with every facet of life.
Yeah, that's true. It must be very hard as a kid to develop a form of empathy for the cost and the toil that their parents have to go through to be able to, just take them to that toy store and buy them those toys, the opportunity cost, I suppose, and to be able to give them a platform where they can visualize this and see this is very much an aid to their parents in terms of having grateful kids, but also an aid to the kids themselves, because in the future, of course, they understand the value of and meaning of their choices, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get feedback from parents around that as well. Again, another story that comes to mind is one parent who I happened to meet at an education conference, actually, and she was able to speak to the difference it made in her child, who was just a frivolous spender prior, but all of a sudden, after having done Banqer in primary school, he was savings, and he had savings goals, and he was working towards them and achieving them. So, yeah, I hope that it makes a difference in the lives of both students and parents alike.
Yeah, and so, on this sort of the same sort of thread, are there common misconceptions that are often the case in young people about money that are able to be dispelled pretty quickly through the Banqer platform? Like, what comes up often that they didn't realize, but now oh my God, that was so obvious, and now I realize it. What are the things that we're not typically teaching in schools that now Banqer is helping with?
Yeah, I think the primary one that sort of goes right back to the point you made at the start around, I guess, digital currency, is that money is no longer tangible. I think we've probably all been to the supermarket and seen a kid waving a card across the terminal to make a payment with no apparent understanding of what's actually going on there. So I think, again, to your points around the complexity of money, with currency being digital, is a lot more challenging for students to grasp what it's all about and the underlying transaction. And I think the way we approach financial education sort of dispels that myth and helps reinforce what's actually going on, behind the plastic veil, I guess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. As I said to you, when we had a chat before offline, we were talking about, this idea of having long-term well-being, which is connected to making sound decisions with money based upon having an awareness of how money affects us, because when we make decisions with money, it impacts our lives in some way, shape or form. And so I wondered, Simon, whether you're aware of any research or evidence that sort of indicates a link between financial literacy and personal well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's this sort of plethora of research out there around financial literacy and wellbeing, and that's really evolved over the years. I think ANZ does, in 2022 or 2021, they did a wellbeing survey, and I think that sort of summarizes the research quite nicely.
Yes.
In the sense of a few years back, we used to look at sort of financial education outcomes purely from a financial literacy perspective. So someone's understanding of a financial concept, I can define interest, that grew to have a focus on financial capability. So not only do I understand the concept, but I can also put it into practice. And then that has now evolved to have that sort of financial well-being perspective. So yeah, I guess that person's holistic relationship with money and finances and life, and whether that sets them up to achieve what they want to be or what they want to do at a well-being level.
Yeah. So you would suspect, and I mean, it seems intuitive to me that if you are more aware of the consequences of the decisions that you make around money, then you're going to have a better capability of having a life that is more in line with what you feel would be helpful for your life. Like you as an example, if you're looking at borrowing money to purchase a home, and you know that the implications of purchasing a home that might be the ideal home in the short term will actually make your life really challenging because you'll be a slave to the mortgage and will affect all of these other priorities, then you're more likely to choose the option that allows you to enjoy your life more holistically. And so from a wellbeing perspective, that would assist. Are you seeing, an awareness at a youth level of these types of ideas?
Yeah, I think so. I think we definitely see an increased appreciation of the broader life or wellbeing implications of the decisions that students are making. And I think that's sort of supported by the holistic approach we take to personal finance education. So students are, in terms of financial concepts, considering anything from the immediacy of want or need decisions in their current life, right through to sort of thinking about how they're saving for retirement by the likes of super. So I think by having students interact with all of those decisions through the simulation, it does grow an appreciation of how engaging with their money can sort of change their life trajectory and their financial well-being in the real world.
Have there been, how long have you had Banqer going, and have there been instances where you've seen children become somewhat young adults yet, or are we still in the sort of beta phase of working out how this affects them?
Yeah, we're going on nearly 10 years now, so we have reached that point. I'd love to say we've done a longitudinal study right from day one. We're not quite at that point, but we do have some students who we've been able to sort of reconnect with, and they've been able to reflect on their journey. Again, one cool example of that was a young woman just reached out to us on our social media and said, "Hey, I did Banqer in, I think it was late primary school, and now I'm in my early 20s, and this is sort of the impact that it's had on my life and my understanding of different financial concepts." So it's definitely awesome to see that coming through. And as we've evolved as a business and sort of grown our product offering, to also see students who started using Banqer in primary school and are now using it in senior secondary and seeing their, I guess, financial capability growth over that time, and that we've been able to go on a journey with them is also really exciting.
You know what's interesting? It just became like apparent to me as well that like there are kids out there that have not had much financial literacy at all, and we got programs like Banqer coming in and really helping with that. But what about me? 42 years old, went through the schooling system. I'm lucky I had a financial planning father, but a lot of
Yeah.
people in my age demographic or older as well have a we all kind of fossilize at a point too, right? So we get a lack of financial education. We then are presumed to have a certain level of financial sophistication and education at a certain age, but reality of it is a lot of people don't. We talk about things like neuroplasticity and the ability to change the brain and learn new things in adulthood and so on. Surely some of these Banqer initiatives and strategies, whilst they are targeted to young people, are relevant for older people too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think regardless of what age and stage you're at in life, if you don't understand a financial concept, then our approach to financial education or financial education generally is relevant to it. I think there's some research that sort of speaks to the optimal time to start learning about money. I think it suggests that at age 3, children can grasp basic money concepts, and by age 7, money habits are starting to become ingrained. Which, when you're in your mid-30s or your 40s, is sort of concerning if you don't have that stuff under wraps already. But the adage of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and if not then, yesterday or today sort of comes to mind for me. So I think it's never too late. There's a bunch of financial education resources out there, and a great time to engage in personal finance is when you're faced with the scenario. So whether that be considering your super, buying your first home, there is still that opportunity to sort of engage and to grow your financial capability as and when required as well.
It seems to me as a financial advisor that there's a lot on the line here because, I get to engage with adults who are coming to me perhaps after a divorce or, perhaps coming into retirement. And the amount of phobia that presents, and the constant theme that I get is, I'd like to be empowered. I'd like to be able to understand. I'd like to be able to be educated. And one of our propositions in our firm is to do things slowly and teach and explain. And so that's fine. But I also think to myself that it's an incredible responsibility. And I wonder, with programs like yours, it seems like the next cohort of people coming through would hopefully have a level of financial education so that they're choosing their financial planner not based upon them educating them, but based upon what their advice might actually be, and then trusting in themselves to be able to understand that advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would like to think that in time with greater financial education in schools, the likes of yourself would just have a greater level of sophistication of those clients coming in the door for the first time. And I guess, there's the opportunity to really focus on that value add and to grow their wealth to achieve what they're looking to in life with them, go on more of a journey together. Yeah.
The other thing too, Simon, I don't know, whether we're going off track here, but it's really interesting to me that often I think as well in terms of relationships, in intimate relationships, and there's often one that's quite financially savvy and the other one is completely not. And you wonder whether sometimes, the relationship exists based upon the exchange of these different competencies. And I wonder whether, like, if everyone came up with a more even understanding of finances, whether it would be better within relationship settings as well, because often this kind of lack of equality between partners around financial education, or perceived equality, because sometimes they're both not great or sometimes they're both very good, but one doesn't think they're very good, but they are. So it's, don't you think this sort of thing, there's a lot on the line with financial education?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it sort of goes back to a point I mentioned earlier that money transcends all facets of our life, whether that be, coming and interacting with a financial advisor or a relationship. And I think, by, I guess, leveling the playing field in terms of financial education and financial capability, we can, support people in many different facets of life. and also just increase and build financial confidence so people have a greater understanding of their financial ambition. And yeah, to your point around relationships, I think that can only be a healthy thing coming into a relationship and understanding what your financial aspirations are and how you fit within the financial world.
Yeah, makes sense. I wonder, with respect to, we've talked a little bit about, obviously, schools have a role to play, companies like Banqer have a role to play, but where do parents fit in? Because we've talked about, in my household, it was like financial planning being talked about at the dinner table, which is kind of strange. But I'm not sure if I enjoyed it all the time either, to be honest. But
Yeah.
But to what extent do parents have a role to play in the financial education of their children? How important is it for them to take lead?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, again, going back to that research talking about when sort of financial behaviours are starting to become ingrained from age 3 through to age 7. I mean, a parent's instrumental in a child's life at that stage, obviously. So I definitely think they've got a role to play. I think the challenge is one around inequality and the fact that we can't assume that all parents or all adults are financially literate and capable themselves. So while I think it's awesome for parents to do what they can and look to empower and build their own financial capability to pass that on, I think that's where school has the opportunity to be the real equalizer and to level that playing field. And it also has the potential to for that financial well-being and financial literacy to permeate from out of the school as well. So if we've got kids going home learning about money and personal finance concepts and continuing those concepts around the dinner table, and supporting the family more broadly to grow their financial capability, I think can only be a good thing as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it makes sense about the competency of the parent as well in terms of, what sort of education they're providing to their kids. But I imagine as well that part of the stack of things that they could do is actually educate themselves, right? Like that's part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are small things that the parents can do as well, and it's mostly around including their kid in their financial life, whether that be as they're going through the supermarket, explaining the decisions they're making, why they're buying one thing and over another, what happens when they tap the card, the sacrifices they may make to afford car repairs or go on holiday. So I think there's a range of opportunities for parents to include kids in their finances, not the stressful stuff. Beyond just upskilling themselves and passing on those lessons. And,
on that, do you have any strange or weird kind of anecdotes around what sort of things parents are doing to, get them to understand money? Like I know I've got a friend, it's not strange or weird, I suppose, but it's a bit formal. He kind of creates a contract with them and kind of stipulates what they need to do. They sign it, and then there's a certain portion of their money that goes to them, then goes to, charity and then this sort of thing. And I kind of liked it, but, it was quite formal. So I'm just wondering, like, what are the types of things that parents do to get the kids involved?
Yeah, I've definitely heard of that sort of approach and the 3 different money boxes around the spend, save, invest, and with the 4th of give. Beyond that, I'm not quite of the age where I have many friends who are sort of parent age with school age kids, and most of our conversations are sort of restricted to with teachers. So I can't say I've got any too weird and wonderful stories around parents and financial.
But with respect to Banqer and what's happening in a school level, is there homework that's taken from a Banqer perspective, and what sort of homework are they taking?
Particularly in our primary school platform, we have homework exercises. Those homework exercises are more focused around asking mum and dad about their relationship with money. So, do you remember when you opened your first superannuation account? Do you remember when you bought your first car? Just sort of encouraging those conversations to continue at home. And I guess, what one story I have heard, to your point around the dinner table piece, was from a school receptionist actually, where her kid, the school over, was using Banqer, our primary school platform, and she took great delight in recounting her youngest child explaining how interests were to their teenage child, which she thoroughly enjoyed that conversation around the dinner table.
Oh, that's cool. So, looking forward to the future, how do you envisage the evolution of financial education, and how will Banqer be a part of it?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean,
it is a big question. It's very macro. You can take it wherever you want.
Yeah, it's an open question. I think when I think about financial education generally, and with the way technology and artificial intelligence is heading, it's a tough one. But I sort of see it as a spectrum. On one end, we've got AI that is essentially doing everything for us, and we end up being dumbed down and spoon fed. I think on the other end, we have great educational delivery, which more aligns educational outcomes and incentivizes educational engagement with our sort of aspirations and desires and improves that education. Where we land, I'm not too sure. And I think there are so many, again, broader macro societal influences that will impact that, whether that be the likes of marketing, social media influencing through to capitalism itself. It's hard to tell where it's going to land on that scale.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I know I believe you've talked about a concept called meaningful money. What does it mean to you, and how do you incorporate that into Banqer?
Yeah, we do like to sort of reinforce what money means to different people and their different sort of ambitions, and the fact that it doesn't have to be individualistic. We have giving within the platform as well, so students can donate to fictitious charities and sort of think beyond themselves. But yeah, definitely encouraging students to think about what money means to them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Coming to the more businessy side of Banqer, how do you balance those commercial aspects of running Banqer with the goals of education and getting out there as much? Like, how do you actually fund yourself and ensure that you're financially viable to do the things that you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we consider ourselves a social enterprise. So for us, sort of purpose and profit goes hand in hand. And we sort of have to work creatively to deliver these resources to schools. Financial education isn't necessarily the most or the best funded resource type within schools. So we're really grateful to work with Net Wealth in primary schools, who essentially pick up what would otherwise be the cost for schools. So Australian primary schools can access the platform for free. And then in secondary schools, there is a sort of small fee associated with accessing the platform, but generally that fits within a secondary school budget somewhere.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in terms of those listening today, grandparents, parents, uncles, aunties, thinking about the kids that they're in contact with, how might they be able to get their children supported through using programs like Banqer? Like, what process would they go through?
Yeah, good question. The natural answer is that you could encourage your child's school to use Banqer, whether that be a primary or secondary school. Share the resource with them, and we can have a conversation with that school around how we can support them. But aside from that, there's a range of different resources that sort of support the development of financial capability out there. I know Spriggy, for one, sort of supporting parents and children with pocket money in the digital world. As I say, there's a range of different resources out there. I think for me, it's just about having the desire to start now, to start somewhere, to start engaging in those financial education conversations. It's a bit like starting a new fitness regime. It's not necessarily easy. It takes a bit of effort and it takes a bit of motivation. And then once you've started, it sort of requires a bit of diligence and constant practice. So for me, it's just really about having the desire to make a start and then following through in terms of that financial education journey.
Great. And are there any resources that are available to the public at large from Banqer that could assist them in starting that journey? And obviously would be a good plug for Banqer. Hopefully you would get some, families recommending Banqer to their schools. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We do actually have some what we call at-home resources that we created a few years back with the team at Net Wealth. So that would be a good place to start in terms of introducing some more money conversations into the home. This would be where I'd recommend starting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And obviously, when you heard of the name "It's Never About Money," the podcast name, did anything come to mind? Obviously, it's always about money for Banqer, right? Like we're thinking about it all the time. How do we talk about it? How do we discuss it? But what comes to mind when you hear the podcast name "It's Never About Money"?
Yeah, for me, it sort of speaks to and this seems counterintuitive in a lot of ways, that money and life sort of go hand in hand. And because of that it is sort of inseparable to a large extent, but at the end of the day, money it's a tool to support you to achieve what you want in life. And also support financial well-being. And to me, financial well-being sort of means the ability to have freedom and make the decisions that you choose in life. So yeah, it sort of is all tied together, but at the end of the day, it does come back to that well-being piece.
And over the next couple of years, what's your journey? What's keeping you up at night? Like, what are the initiatives that you're going to unveil through Banqer? This year we have launched a second version of our secondary school platform. So our original version focused on junior secondary students. This new version focuses on senior secondary. It deals more explicitly with the scenarios that students will face when they leave school for the final time. Mm-hmm. So they think about furnishing a house, they think about buying a car and the associated costs, and that platform actually deals with well-being more explicitly in terms of the financial decisions they make within the platform. We sort of communicate the broader well-being impact of those decisions. So seeing that platform be expanded and through schools throughout Australasia is a big focus for us. Beyond that, we're sort of exploring how we can leverage our existing technology and expertise in the adult financial education space. So we're at the relatively early stage of that, but yeah, believe there's an opportunity to support adults on their financial education journeys and sort of looking to connect with people who may be interested in that, whether that be as a financial advisor or as an employer, or somewhere where they have a vested interest in someone else's financial well-being and education, really. Oh, to me I'm putting up my hand right now, Simon. That sounds amazing. Imagine a platform of financial education where a client can come back to you and say, I heard about this concept. Can you please describe it to me a little bit more in person, rather than you're trying to guess what the client actually understands and what they don't. I think it's a massive gap, and I reckon financial advisors would absolutely love a sort of portal or a program that would be able to assist their clients in that journey. It's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it to a certain extent probably comes back to that broader well-being and the purpose of the podcast piece as well, supporting the likes of yourself to have more conversations around what someone actually wants to achieve in life, rather than the nuts and bolts of the finances themselves. And I also think it's of increased importance as we're entering a period of time where we're going to have a large intergenerational wealth transfer, and how do we also transfer that financial education and that financial preparedness as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. We're at the end of our episode, but I've really enjoyed our chat, and I'm glad we got to explore so many different topics. Apologies for going off on tangents. For some reason, it's winter down here, and my brain's going off in different areas. But look, I like to catch out people who haven't listened to prior episodes of It's Never About Money by asking a question. What is your? Can I ask it every time? What is your spirit animal and why?
Oh, it's a good question. Spirit animal. This is a tough question. I really don't know. It may be a bit of a cop-out. My spirit animal would probably be a sheep, maybe, as the son of a sheep farmer who drove around the farm, talking about the impact of foreign exchange on wool and meat prices. So maybe we'll go with that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. That sounds like a really, really interesting indoctrination into the world of money. I'm not sure that I would have loved that. I still don't love foreign exchange.
Hey, I'm not a farmer, so take what you want from that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure the community will absolutely love this episode. I can't wait to send it out, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if we can access some of your resources and seeing how you go with that education platform for financial advisors and their clients. It's great.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. I really enjoyed the conversation today, and I love sort of what you're doing and the whole purpose of the podcast. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
If you have resonated in any way with the sentiments of this podcast, we would be delighted to direct you to our website, www.itsneveraboutmoney.com.au, for more free resources and education aimed at improving your capacity to make sound financial decisions for the benefit of your family. We wish you every success, however you define it.